I suffered most whenever my extended family attended school occasions. For my graduation they all came, the whole noisy, foreign-looking lot of old fat aunts in their dark mourning dresses and hairnets, uncles with full droopy mustaches and baby blue or salmon-colored suits and white pointy shoes and fedora hats, the many little cousins who snuck in without tickets. They sat in the first row in order to better understand the Americans' fast-spoken English, but how could they listen when they were constantly speaking among themselves in florid-sounding phrases, rococo consonants, rich rhyming vowels, their loud voices carried? How could I introduce them to my friends? These relatives had such complicated names, and there were so many of them, and their relationships to myself were so convoluted. There was my tia Josefina, who was not really an aunt, but a much older cousin, and her daughter, Aida Margarita, who was adopted, un hija de Carrianza. My uncle of affection, Tio Jose, brought my madrina, Tia Emilia, and her comadre, Tia Pilar. My friends rarely had more than their nuclear family to introduce. After the commencement ceremony, my family waited outside in the parking lot while my friends and I signed yearbooks with nicknames which recalled our high school good times. Beans and Pepperoni and Alcatraz. We hugged and cried and promised to keep in touch. Our goodbyes went on too long. I heard my father's voice calling out across the parking lot, "Julita, vámonos!" Back home, my tios and tias and primas, mami and papi and mis hermanas, had a party for me with sancocho and store-bought pudin inscribed with "Happy Graduation, Julia." There were many gifts. That was a plus to a large family. I got several wallets and a suitcase with my initials and a graduation charm from my godmother and money from my uncles. The biggest gift was a portable typewriter from my parents for writing my stories and poems. Someday, the family predicted, my name would be well known throughout the United States. I laughed to myself, wondering which one I would go by. And that's actually the end, guys. So this is a story about one little girl who, when she first came to New York City, discovered that her name was going to change. It was going to be different in a different situation, and how she deals with those name changes throughout her life and how they affect her identity. This last part's really interesting because it says someday the family predicted that her name would be well known throughout the United States. I want you to think about what we're doing right this second and ponder to yourself, did that prediction come true? And what name did she decide to go with if that is the case? I also want to point out to you the footnotes. The footnotes over here, there's quite a few of them, and they try to explain some of the Spanish words in here, which I did not pronounce perfectly. But the names of different kinds of relationships that she has in her family. For example, she has cousins of all ages. She has adopted family members. She has a godmother. A godmother and a godfather are people who would take care of you if your parents died. They're people who are entrusted to look after you if your parents cannot. And so she's got all these really interesting, family associations, and they've all come to her graduation to celebrate with her, which is pretty amazing. And then she mentions down here the nuclear family. I don't know if you've heard this phrase before, but it refers to the closest part of the family, the mother, the father, and the children. And that's more typical in the Western world, like in the United States, for a family who lives in a home to be just the nuclear family. But I think if we think about it, all of us could think of other people who we consider family, some of which are relations of ours, and maybe some who even aren't. Who is it that's a part of your family?